Okay, hi folks. Just want to talk to you for a minute. I got some time to make a video today, and I have a confession to make before I let you listen to about 40 minutes of me talking about belief and the Democratic National Convention, but not in detail. I watched it. Uh, Kamala Harris is a rock star. She's a good. She pulled it off, I think, in terms of her speaking. So I think she's going to get some momentum from that. Anyway, I have a confession to make. Look, I make these videos. It's a kind of therapy, I guess, because nobody's watching. And I'm not the kind of person that would really feel good about audience capture anyway. Like, if people were listening to me, I think it'd make me feel kind of weird in a way because I don't like the idea of feeling like you're all that. And I've noticed a lot of influencers or people that I've watched who aren't just specialists in something like gardening or filmmaking or something get pretty annoying after a while. Lex and so on. They take themselves so seriously. After a while, it's just quite annoying. And it's a kind of closed ecosystem, a gated community. Very few people pay attention to, and so what? It's just like you go and you look at people that think like you so you can feel good about yourself and what you believe anyway. Very few people challenge their beliefs by looking at stuff that might be uncomfortable or show them something that they're unfamiliar with or unknowledgeable about. So maybe I'm nuts for making these videos. Nobody watches anyway. It's kind of silly and stupid, but I like it. I enjoy doing it. So if it is a kind of therapy for me, if it's working, I'll continue making a video here and there. And when I get totally bored and tired of it and being a fool, I'll stop and do something else. But, from the pandemic time until now, it's been kind of fun making videos. So whatever, I'm a weirdo. I hope you don't mind the 2 or 3 people who watch this. And I appreciate your spending some time with me, but I'd much rather be at a cafe with people talking about a book or having an argument about something. It'd be much more fun. I don't think I'm going to make any new friends because my worldview is too complicated, too complex. And I'm not all just about feel good. I feel good questioning things and exploring reality, even if it's uncomfortable. It makes me feel good. So I'm a weirdo. And I'm not going to make any friends like that. You make friends by mirroring other people and fitting in and telling war stories and, stroking people's egos and pretending to like everyone and pretending like everything's wonderful. The friends that you grew up with or your family or whatever, the people that know the ugly side of you, they're few and far between. Those real friends that know the down and dirty you. That's not always cool, not always special, not always successful. Not the Instagram you, but the really dirty, stinky you. So, whatever, I'm old, I don't need new friends. I can take the solitude of my existence. And I can still do fun projects with people every once in a while, which is really great. So anyway, that's my confession. I'm probably a lunatic, and nothing I say is important or should matter to anybody. But I'm going to share it anyway for what it's worth. So let's talk about belief, shall we? Well, hello, I'm back again. So anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about belief. So one of the unique characteristics of our species, obviously, is language. And symbolic language also extends not only to verbal speaking skills, but mathematics, computer programming, music, and so on. This is like one of our first technologies, actually. For whatever reason, we evolved to be able to use our voices the way we do and our minds the way we do. Much has been written. There's a lot of science behind all this you can look at if you feel like it. But one of the things we have become, I think this started before civilization, before we could hoard grains and live at large scale communities. Anyway, we're believers. We have these cave paintings, for example. One can imagine the stories connected to those paintings. Homo storyteller, homo true believer, homo hubris. We're complex animals with complex emergent systems we call culture and minds, consciousness, and so on. Anyway, yeah, so belief is a huge and very important characteristic of what we are as human beings, as Homo sapiens. And it feels good to believe, obviously. For tens of thousands of years, probably, it's felt good to believe. It's a lot easier to believe, and it feels better to believe than it does to doubt, to interrogate things, to question things, because to do so means we have to go into unfamiliar territory, and we have to explore something that we don't know, and it may be very difficult. It could be a difficult subject. It could be culturally taboo. So you can imagine in the Middle Ages or whatever, witch hunts and so on. The 30 Years' War, where people killed each other mercilessly in Europe for a long time. It was a horror show in Germany over how you interpret the Christian faith, which is madness when you think about it, when you think about what Jesus taught. So anyway, we like to believe. So every 4 years, we have a presidential election in the United States. And every 4 years, the candidates say that it's the most important election of all time. It's historic and all that. And every 4 years, they make similar promises. The politicians and the administrations are going to solve problems. It's always been like that since the founding of the United States. And obviously, after FDR, obviously, we have term limits. But the point is, we want to believe in our candidate. So tens of millions of people in the United States believe that the Democrats are good and they're going to solve problems. And tens of millions of people think that Donald Trump is going to bring you to the promised land. So promises, promises. And obviously, if politicians kept promises and solved problems, we wouldn't need politicians. So organized groups of people, coordinated, organized groups of people collaborating across networks solve problems, especially major problems. Public, private organizations, international organizations that are coordinated, that are collectivized to a certain degree. In other words, they're working together coherently, cooperatively, for the same end, to accomplish something specific, and they're putting their time, energy, and resources into it. That's what solves problems. People have to get involved, and they have to be motivated to get involved and to solve a problem. So when Kamala Harris talks about, or people at the Democratic National Convention talk about, people have to get to work and get out the vote and all this stuff. It's true. But once Donald Trump or Kamala Harris is elected, it doesn't end there. People get too complacent. we are still going to have the same problems. I really doubt that Kamala Harris won't be a hawkish president. They all are. All presidents come from a certain, part of the status quo, business as usual, clique, neocon, neoconservative, whatever, neoliberal. They're all from that same culture. So they're not going to change the game. The military-industrial complex will still be there. What we call the deep state will still be there. In other words, crimes against democracy, state crimes against democracy. I mean, people who flout the law, who are above the law, organizations and groups and activities that don't go by the law. And, Kamala Harris is a prosecutor, so she knows the legal game system. Anyway, we're all believers. We want to believe that our candidate is going to solve problems. Their administration is going to deliver the goods, bring people to the promised land. So in the Republican sense, he's Donald Trump is divinely inspired. Basically, he's going to, God sent him to do whatnot. And Kamala Harris is all about progress and the future and so on. I don't believe the future is going to be bright because there's a bill from nature that's coming due, and it will be paid. And we're going to have to face the circumstances that flow directly from our culture, our way of life, whether we want to or not. You just can't stop it. Human beings are part and parcel of nature, and nature imposes limits on living systems. If you read Overshoot, for example, there's some really good information there, well articulated, about the symbiosis and the balance of nature and so on. Anyway, our way of life is extremely destructive, and obviously modern industrial technological civilization requires a lot of energy. We're going through our oil and gas fast, and that has consequences that are dire. And we can't avoid that. The only way we could is if we coordinated our efforts across nation states and across cultures and worked together in peace to solve these major problems. And I think that includes cultural problems associated with value systems, problems associated with work, with prosperity, food, everything. But we're not going to do that. America doesn't want to compete with China, so it has to destroy China. The system in the United States needs enemies. So if Putin didn't exist, you'd have to invent him. Just like Biden said, if Israel didn't exist, you'd have to invent Israel. We need that enemy in order to keep those corporations profitable. What are for-profit prisons if they're not full? You privatize prisons and you have empty prisons. Nobody's making any money. So I don't know why people don't get that, but they don't seem to understand it. So anyway, about belief, right? I did a little outline here that I edited, and yes, I used the internet and all that stuff just to save time. And you guys probably know everything you need to know about belief, but at its core, belief accepts something as true or real, often without any concrete evidence or proof. So none of this, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. You don't need evidence to believe something. It's a cognitive construct, and it shapes our understanding of our world and influences us. Our thoughts, our feelings, our ideas, our actions. It has a profound effect on everything, I don't think my cat believes anything, but we're not cats, right? So whether you believe in a soul or whatever, human beings are separate from nature because we're better, homeocentric beliefs, we're like gods because we're in the image of God. Whatever you believe like that, you don't need any evidence for it. You believe it. You believe Donald Trump is going to take you to the promised land. You believe Kamala Harris is going to create justice and jobs and a strong military and all that kind of stuff. Whatever it is you want to believe, you're going to believe because it feels good. There are explicit beliefs that are consciously held, easily articulated, and these are like religions, religious dogma, doctrines, or political ideologies, some of them. If you want to read Das Kapital or something, the political philosophers during the 18th century, John Locke, Adam Smith, John Maynard Keynes in the 20th century. He's an economist, but anyway, these some of them are very well articulated and logical and reasonable and rational and well laid out, easy to adopt and believe in and trust. Depending on who you are, you'll go one way or the other. And some beliefs are implicit. They're kind of unconsciously held. And they influence our behavior without our even knowing it, without our conscious awareness. And this is stuff like stereotypes or biases, cognitive biases, heuristics. Somebody said on Facebook to me I shared an article from Al Jazeera, and this person said, I wouldn't read anything from Al Jazeera because they're in Qatar. I'm wondering, you didn't read the article, obviously, because you don't judge an article based on, where the office is, the home office of the outlet. But that person did. So I wondered where the antipathy came from. Well, they're Qataris. Well, do you just hate Qataris for some reason? You've been to Qatar and they're terrible people, or you hate Al Jazeera because they don't like Zionists, or what's your reason for hating Qataris? I don't know. Well, it's because of hostages. Well, I don't know that anyone in Qatar took any hostages. And if Hamas leaders are living in Qatar, so is the U.S. military, and so are leaders from around the world. They're there, living there with their own national passports and getting along. So I don't get it. But there's an implicit bias there that is reflexive. It's thoughtless. You don't even think about it. And then there are descriptive beliefs, right? So this is concerning facts about the world. You might use scientific evidence, empiricism, and so on to prove that the earth is round, Copernicus or something like that. You're using mathematics, you're using logic, you're using various lines of evidence, you're using microscopes, and so on. And then you're describing through scientific theories or other theories how something works. You can literally tell people how an engine works, like a straight six combustion engine in a Mustang, 1967 Mustang, my first car. And you can describe how that works. And because of the description matches the reality, you believe that you're looking at a straight six-cylinder combustion engine and you know how it works. And then there's evaluative beliefs. And this gets into moral territory, but still very important. Values, value judgments. Like, do you trust Kamala Harris or do you trust Donald Trump? Do you think Donald's honest? Who do you think is more honest, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, for example? And why? What are your reasons for that? So you might have experiences with these people, or you might examine their record, or so on, and you have evaluated the situation, your experience with these people, and you believe that you can trust them. That's just one example. And then there might be prescriptive beliefs, right? So how should you act? Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Thou shalt not say should. You should do this, you should do that. Some of my friends get mad at me. Don't tell me what I should do. Oughts. You ought not. So you might believe, for example, that you always should help those people who are in need. And then you might equivocate on that, or think more carefully and say, how can I possibly help everyone in need, and so on and so forth. So anyway, you have prescribed beliefs, right? And those are usually based on aphorisms or heuristics that kind of make sense in our situation. So those are just some types of belief, and we take for granted all these types of belief. We don't really interrogate our beliefs that much. We don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about why we believe this, that, and the other thing. We just say, this is what I believe, so get lost. And a lot of my friends, if I share something with them that makes them feel uncomfortable about something they believe, even if I'm not really doing that directly, I'm not trying to convince them that they shouldn't believe something, but I'm just shining a light on something that makes them a little uncomfortable about their beliefs, they might just shut down and say, I'm not listening to that. I'm not interested in what you have to say about that. I'm not listening to that. Never mind. I never talk about religion or politics. Something like that. I've had lots of people say, I'm a Baptist because my grandfather was a Baptist and my father's a Baptist, and that's that, right? And then you can still hate people for being Muslim because their grandfather was Muslim and their father was Muslim or Hindu or whatever else, my family's been Republican for generations or whatever. Even though republicanism or Republicans, what they believe, changes over time, and everything changes over time. So our beliefs will change also. And beliefs are extremely powerful forces that have a profound impact on individuals and society. Really profound. And you can see that everywhere, right? If you really just open your eyes and think about it for a minute. So beliefs are basically the foundation of social norms and values and institutions. They shape our social interactions and in many ways determine what's acceptable behavior. And they influence cultural practices. When I was in Japan, people behave differently. They act differently. What am I supposed to do, When in Japan, pick up some Japanese traits. I would come home for a visit to the United States and I would talk to somebody on the phone and I'd be bowing. Hi, and bowing on the phone, even though the person on the other end of the line can't see my physical behavior. It was just something that I adopted, it was a physicalization of the culture. And I've always taken my shoes off to go in anywhere I lived after living in Japan for a while. It just makes sense to me. I wouldn't jump into my bed with shoes on anymore. And when I see this in movies and TV shows, I cringe, Oh my God, he's got his shoes on in bed. Anyway, that's a trite example, but, belief in gender equality, for example. And gender, not even sexual, right? Cisgender, dude gender, whatever. These beliefs have led to changes in society, right? Where gay marriage is okay. Whereas a long time ago, during Oscar Wilde's time in England, he could be thrown in jail or killed for being homosexual. Equal rights, civil rights, all these things we talk about come from beliefs that we hold in society. These truths we hold as self-evidence, right? We believe in the equality of blah, blah, blah. You know, there are lots of speeches like that you've seen in history. Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, just name a ton of them. You know, Martin Luther, the reformist, Jesus Christ, the Buddha, Confucius. Anyway, we have political beliefs that stem from those ideologies, and they shape our political systems, our constitutions, and our systems of decision making. Like when I talk about coding capital, for example, the capital code, you know, who writes the laws for how the financial system works, the banking system works, the business system works, and so on and so forth, flow from beliefs. And some of these beliefs, we just absorb them from our culture, from Yale Law School, or whatever. And they influence political parties, voting patterns, social movements like BLM or whatever. And, you know, for example, belief in democracy and freedom. What is freedom? What is license? What is liberty? What do you mean by those things? What is democracy? Can you look across nation states, across time, and get different descriptions of what you think democracy is? So what do you believe in? What do you believe American democracy is all about? And wanting, you know, power or a voice in one's governance has fueled revolutions and political reforms worldwide, across nations, across cultures. And beliefs are extremely important for economics as well. Are you a Chicago school guy? You know, are you Keynesian? Do you believe in growth, GDP, whatever? Sometimes people equate our economic beliefs to religious beliefs. Well, it's a belief system, okay? So in that sense, it is like a religion. And in my opinion, Donald Trump is like a cult leader, because he really doesn't know shit except how to manipulate people in a very con artist kind of way. I think Kamala Harris is more substantial as a person in terms of what she's done and accomplished, the kind of work she's had, and so on. I'm not saying I have any faith that she's going to bring peace on earth or solve the problems that I'm personally concerned with. But I think she's a more substantial, eloquent, intelligent human being than Donald. He's just a selfish narcissist, con artist. But anyway, so we believe in these different economic ideas and about markets, for example, the invisible hand, about government intervention, regulation, the distribution of wealth, and how wealth influences politics. So a lot of times I think that, you know, our representatives are really working for their true constituency, are corporations, corporate leaders, people who play in the markets, people who own a lot of stock, a lot of property. And it's always been that way, right? Yeah, you couldn't even be a vote if you didn't own property in many places around the world over a long period of time in history. So, you know, capitalism is also a belief system. And it's modeled differently in different countries. So you could talk about the socialist kind of state capitalism in China ad nauseum. Much has been written. It's a complex subject. And you can talk about how we just think we're living in freedom and democracy, even though we still have problems. A lot of problems in the United States that never seem to get solved. So you don't have free healthcare, you don't have free education. Everything is going one direction. And there's no progressivism in the United States in the sense that this like social justice sense. Really, there isn't. Yeah, you have abortion rights for a while, and then you don't. Supreme Courts go from liberal to conservative, whatever you mean by those two terms. And that brings us to ideology, right? Ideologies are also belief systems, and they provide us with a very, like I said before, a coherent framework for understanding our world and figuring out what we're going to do in it. Prescribed action. And ideologies can be political or religious or philosophical, and they really influence and shape collective behavior. And behavior is a big thing, right? So I wrote something on Facebook today about something like, the most powerful thing an individual or an organization can have is the ability to direct and focus people's attention. So if you're looking at a certain kind of postmodernist, popular, audience capture type neo-Marxism or whatever philosophy, wokeism or whatever, if you're paying attention to that a lot, you're going to naturally absorb it and believe in it, even if you don't know what it means, because it's so confusing many times, these ideologies. Anyway, they really are powerful. You look at the Bolshevik Revolution, for example, the Maoist Revolution in China, the American Revolution. All of these things flowed out of very powerful ideological belief systems, beliefs. And now, obviously one of the big ones we associate with beliefs is just religion. So, they've been central to everything for as long as anything's been written down. So whether it's Norse mythology or Hinduism, Bhagavad Gita, or Confucianism, even if you don't call that a religion, or, the split between the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church and the Roman Catholics and the Reformers, all the different sects of Christianity, and the two major sects of Islam, Shia and Sunni, and all this kind of stuff, all these different mythologies and whatever. There's just so many of them. And, monotheism is a thing. It wasn't always there. We were more animistic way back when we lived in small tribal groups of hunter-gatherers and whatnot. So Christianity, Islam, and Judaism is a very unique and very young thing, even though we think it's ancient. In terms of our species, it's not that old. And some of the new sects or attitudes towards or belief systems, like secular Jews, for example, versus or Christians who are these days cultural Christians, right? They're not Catholics, they're not Baptists, they're not Anabaptists, they're not Church of Latter-day Saints. They're just culturally Christian because Jordan Peterson said that's the way it is. And you believe him, you trust him. There's all these layers of belief there. So anyway, beliefs are complex and multifaceted constructs that profoundly influence individuals and society. Really, really big time. And if we don't interrogate our beliefs, we're not doing ourselves any favors. The stories we tell are all based on beliefs, and they shape how we understand our world and what we do in our world, and affect almost every aspect of our lives. So understanding the nature and the impacts of beliefs is extremely important. So we should interrogate our beliefs. We should question our beliefs. And we should understand and tolerate to some degree, not perfectly, other people's beliefs. At least just to know where they're coming from so we can protect ourselves from people who might believe really dangerous stuff. You know, beliefs can be a source of strength and unity and imagination and creativity and inspiration, but they can also fuel conflict and division and ignorance and intolerance. So we have to recognize the diversity of beliefs and belief systems and respect different perspectives. It's essential to have respect for different perspectives, but also to interrogate them carefully and understand the differences between these different belief systems and how we think they impact everything. Life on Earth, we are part and parcel of the biosphere, the biota, the ecosystem. And without all of it, the microbes and everything, the viruses, we're not here, folks. We disappear. The stories stop, the beliefs stop, all of it goes away. So it's really important, okay, to understand this stuff. Now, I'll talk a bit about the Democratic National Convention, just briefly. You know, every time I watch these conventions, I hear the same tropes, the same promises. I'm not going to just rattle them off. It's too goddamn boring. And why is it we hear every 4 years the same shit if these people are doing their jobs? If these administrations are doing their jobs? Who do they work for? I'm sure the corporations that get tax cuts and get major, huge government contracts and so on are happy. They're always happy. But are we getting any better? I mean, for a while things were good, right? We had a good patch, and we're lucky to have oil, gas, and coal, all this cheap energy to do all the work for us, and the machines we have and the technology. But we can't take this for granted because it's not going to be here forever. We're going to have to figure out how to do things differently. So if politicians and political parties had addressed just a few of the significant issues that we're interested in, that I'm interested in, we wouldn't need politicians or political parties. That's why I ask people to read Simone Weil's book on political parties. She doesn't think they're worth a damn. You know, if politicians and their administrations had implemented solutions that we were hoping for to the primary concerns that really, really bug us and really motivate us and worry us, we wouldn't need them. We wouldn't need them. We could get on with business, and we could have deregulation. We wouldn't even need courts or law, rule of law, if we really took care of business. Now, some people say you need a different system, like a monarchy and so on. Different reactionaries talk about that and whatnot. Hey, look, you need something to organize society, you know, to deal with, because human beings are weird, and we believe all kinds of weird shit. And believing in weird shit makes us do weird shit, ugly shit, bad shit. And so, you know, it's a real ugly business, but it's still, politics is a business, folks. It's a business, big business. In any country in the world, it's a big business. And people are motivated by a lot of complex things, status and power and greed. And they have altruistic motivations as well, obviously. People are people. So my view of this Democratic National Convention and the Republican National Convention, you know, they're like Super Bowl halftime shows. Everybody gets excited and emotional, and they clap, and they got filled with hope and everything. It's like when you go to a motivational speaker and you paid $1,000 to hear some person talk and get you all motivated, and you walk out feeling like tomorrow's the new day. I'm going to get my shit together and everything's going to be beautiful. It's the same thing when you go to church and you come out and you feel like you were communing with God and other faithful people, and you feel real great. And you walk out and you know, it's like a romance. You're walking on air. You feel great. And then life comes back to the mean, and the mean can be pretty mean, where it's just a struggle and things don't seem to be going anywhere. We have a lot of sick people in the United States, pathologically sick, clinically ill. And some of these illnesses were created by the businesses that we are obsessed with that make tons of people wealthy. We like it that way. We don't mind getting sick, metabolic syndrome, if we have a pill we can take for it. And that's big business. Cleaning up the disaster, which is modern civilization's, flows of effluence and wastes and the destructive poisons, it's extremely expensive. And it could be really good business for certain business people if they get a hold of it. That's why there's this trope about, green is just is a scam, a business scam. People get filthy rich doing green shit, man. As if oil companies aren't making tons of money and so on and so forth. And the financial system, for God's sakes, financialized capitalism. Come on, folks. Anyway, it's a huge celebration of people's beliefs and hopes. And, the American dream, whatever that is. I don't know. I don't think we really want to take the task of dealing with things and integrating coordinated efforts somehow to solve real problems in an honest way. We'd rather celebrate. If the ship is going down, we might as well have a bottle of champagne and enjoy the party. So yeah, this is the thing I wrote on Facebook. The most powerful thing an institution, organization, or individual can do is regulate and direct people's attention. So we're paying attention to this thing while somebody steals our watch. But whatever we're paying attention to, that's going to be our focus. That's what we're going to parrot. Those are the beliefs we're going to hold. And it's going to affect how we behave in every aspect of our lives. So the convention's about feeling good about ourselves, just like evangelicals feel good because Jesus loves them in particularly so much and doesn't love those other people. People have told me on Facebook that I'm damned, that I better get good with God or I'm going to hell. Well, I beg to differ. I happen to believe that Jesus loves me so much. He's got a really wonderful life in heaven planned for me. So, take that, put that in your pipe and smoke it. So, believing in things and hoping to feel good is wonderful. It feels good. Belief feels good. But questioning and learning about reality, not so much. It's difficult. And it's a kind of, when you question things, it's a kind of cognitive dissonance, a species of that's really painful and uncomfortable. The other thing I wanted to joke about was that in all these conventions, they always have to come up with a slogan that everybody can repeat. People love that. They love that. So, when you jump in the pool, you get wet. When you swim in the sea, you get wet. When you walk in the rain, you get wet. When you walk in humid, hot city streets, you get wet. You get wet. You get wet. And then everybody feels like $1 million. So folks, interrogate your beliefs. That's what I wanted to say to you today. And that's about it. Bully MT, out.